Mr. Bliefeld,
Here.
Mr. Frank, Mrs. Ginsburg,
Here.
Mrs. Heyman, Mrs. Kirianikis,
Here.
Mr. Stoloff,
Here.
Mrs. Walsh,
Here.
Mr. Antonio.
Here.
At this point, we have 6 board members here, 3 are absent, and Alex Gindia.
Here.
Thank you, Alex, for joining us as our student board rep. Did I miss anybody? All right.
All right. Well, hopefully the other board members can join later in the meeting. Alex, this is your first board meeting, so welcome. You're getting a kind of an early start in your role as a student board rep. And to help me out, can you pronounce your last name for us, please?
Yeah, it's Gindaya.
Gindaya. Okay.
Yep.
Thank you. And it's time for the Pledge of Allegiance. John, do you have the flag graphic?
All right.
Okay. I pledge allegiance
To the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic
For which
for which it stands,
one
one
nation,
nation, under God,
God,
indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, thanks everyone. I'd like to welcome everyone to this June 22nd, 2020 special meeting of the Wissahickon School District's Board of Directors. Our primary agenda item tonight is a discussion about reopening schools this fall. And our agenda is a little bit different this time around, where we essentially are going to have 2 public comment periods, the discussion on reopening schools this fall, and then we're going to close things out. So it's an abbreviated agenda, but a very important topic that I know a lot of folks are interested in. And the way the agenda is structured in the published document, I think is a little bit different than the way I want to handle it this evening. What I'd like to do is review public comment first. And this is for comments that have been submitted to us prior to the meeting. Any comments submitted prior to 6:30 this evening. Then we'll have a discussion on the reopening plans for school. And then we'll close out with a second public comment period where I'll read any remarks that were submitted after 6:30 this evening or during the meeting itself. Okay, any questions about that before I get started?
No, but I think that Wayne should know that Ronnie and Frank and Olivia are now in the meeting.
Oh, there we go. Hi, Ronnie. Hey, David. And hi, Olivia.
Hi there.
Hi, Joe. Everyone.
Okay.
Hello.
So I'm going to go switch over to public comments. And as is noted in the agenda, and as we've been doing for the last few months since the quarantine took effect, is that we've been allowing folks to submit public comments in writing to us via email that's provided and listed in the agenda itself. Folks identify their name and address and have written comments, which I will read out, or if they are particularly long, I'm going to have to summarize them, and their written comments will become part of the minutes for this meeting. And with that, I'm going to start off with the first public comment, which was submitted by Elizabeth Ocasio from Bluebell. And it reads, I've heard rumors of a part-time school week. This concerns me because as a society, we are not set up for children to only be in school for part of the time. I don't know how parents will be able to work their full-time jobs and have children home from school. Paying for aftercare for that amount of time would not be economical or rational. If aftercare is the proposed answer, they should just be in school. As far as health concerns, having the children go from one group of people to multiple aftercares only increases the spread of any germs. Also, as hard as our teachers worked during the pandemic, the quarantine education was not the quality education I'd hoped for my children when moving to the district. My daughter started to really improve this year with her reading and writing. However, while at home, she has struggled as I'm not a reading specialist and she has vocalized a hate of writing, which she previously loved. The teachers definitely went above and beyond, and I'm extremely thankful for their work, but this can never replace the benefits of in-person instruction. I have faith in our district to take all of the information and do the best for our families and students. Thank you for your time. The next comment is submitted from Deanne Morris, and it reads, given the global rise and rise in number of COVID-19 cases in other areas of this country, a second resurgence in this area seems likely. Will the district be offering a fully virtual platform for families who might have someone who is immunocompromised in the home? Or would you encourage these families to seek out a virtual charter school option? By when would a decision be made about a virtual platform through the district? Thanks for your time. Our next comment is from Betsy Lovensheimer. I know this is one of the biggest challenges ever faced by the district, and I'm glad to see the task force has been formed and is seeking input from those served by the district. I am sure if properly formed, the task force will do a wonderful job. A few questions are below. What technical professionals are on the task force that understand the medical, public health, and risk management elements needed to guide the decisions? Please share these team members' backgrounds, education, and experience. Who is on the task force representing the students? Looking forward to the meeting. Thanks. Our next comment is from Ken Trotline, and it reads, I understand that much of the pressure to reopen schools is to provide childcare for the younger children so parents can go to work. I've heard suggestions from many sources, including the June 17, 2020 Pennsylvania Reopening Task Force report, that school districts consider opening buildings for the elementary grades K to 6 and continue virtual teaching and learning for the older students. I would like the WSD school board to consider the community and social aspect that school provides for all students, including those in middle and high school. The mental health aspect of the continued isolation will not be good. Please work to find a balance that will ensure community continuity of learning for all students while also considering their social and emotional well-being. I have great confidence that you will find that balance. Thank you. The next comment is from Ginger and Jeff Pulio. The kids must attend class in person in the fall. The lack of regular one-to-one communication inhibits both the learning of all students and especially the social development of the younger students in the district. It would damage our kids' development to continue using remote learning only while waiting for a cure for COVID-19. To do this as safe as possible, we need to ensure social distancing between students. Class sizes, especially K-2, must be smaller to ensure social distancing and minimize virus transmission between students. We all know the K-2 ages in particular have increased transmission rates for infection. Our family saw this with common diseases just between our daughter's 2019 to 2020 kindergarten class of 24 students and our son's 2016 to 2017 class of 20 students. We received at least 15 strep notifications for our daughter's kindergarten class. The next comment is from Melissa Chargel. And it reads, well, it's a series of questions. The first is, how are we protecting immune-compromised children or those with immunocompromised family? Number two is, if a child does not currently have an IEP or 504, and it is clear that distance learning is not working for them, how are we accommodating them? 3, what if the child fits both 1 and 2? 4, will children have an increased number of allowable sick days? 5, should we consider considerably more classroom time outdoors? Thank you. The next comment is from Stephen Lau. And this one is a lengthy one with some attachments and links. So I'm going to summarize it. It starts off with some initial comments regarding school policy and COVID-19. It is time to reopen our schools. The risks of keeping children out of school are well known, with serious negative effects from deterioration of future educational achievement to deterioration of mental and physical health. The risk of children contracting COVID-19 and having significant health issues is very, very low. The risk of children dying from COVID-19 is essentially non-existent. COVID-19 is a health risk and crisis for elderly people, particularly those in nursing homes. We should not damage our children's education further by overreacting to what is essentially a health issue for elderly people and others who may have underlying health issues. Accommodations can be made for the minority of children and teachers who may be at higher risk for serious outcomes if they contract COVID-19. For the majority of children in our school system, they should enjoy their right to a full educational experience. And as I said, there are links to some websites with additional information as well as some other data on COVID-19 in our area. The next comment is from Kara Finn. I understand that split schedules may be one of the many options being considered for the fall. If this is the case, how far in advance will parents learn their children's schedule? As much notice as possible would be appreciated to allow us to determine alternate childcare for the days our children will not be in school. Thanks. And the next one, and the last of the ones submitted before the meeting by 6:30, is from Lynn Odell. In the past, I have rallied for more hand washing, at a minimum after the playground, before lunch, after lunch, and before and after snack. It is my understanding, based on the responses I received, that there just isn't enough time. Makes sense, but it is no longer acceptable for basic hygiene. We all know hand washing is number one, then hand sanitizer is a backup if hand washing is not possible. I have ideas of how we can accommodate necessary hand washings, but I would like to learn how the school district is planning to move forward to reach this state's requirement. Thanks so much for considering this message. And again, those are all the comments that were received prior to the meeting and received before 6:30 p.m. Any additional comments that have been received after 6:30 or throughout this meeting will be read by me in the second comment period after the discussion of school reopening plans. Okay, and then with that, I'm going to hand things off to Jim for the main part of our agenda. Oh, and I should state that a number of questions were raised within the public comments I just read through, and I believe that we will address or at least touch on each of those or are likely to touch on each of those during our discussion about the school reopening plans. But if there are any that seem relevant that we did not address, we are going to circle back on some of those afterwards. Okay, Jim?
Okay, thank you. Does everybody see the reopening of schools presentation there?
Yep.
Okay.
Yes.
Do we see the one that says introduction now?
Yes.
Terrific. Okay, so let's go back. So thank you for the introduction, Joe. And the as we have stated in our various advertisements of tonight, this tonight is intended to be a opening discussion of the reopening of schools for fall of 2020. And we're going to try to address quite a few areas, topics of interest, either included already in the questions or ones we had in mind to talk with everyone about. And I think the really important point is that this is the beginning. And so we'll keep that in mind as we go on. As it says here, no decisions have been made yet. We're going to share options and we're going to share some challenges and issues and then hopefully answer any questions. This is a preliminary update on the reopening of schools in the fall. So current status. We have a task force that is spending a great deal of time examining every angle of this. We have over 30 employee leaders from across the district. We have teachers represented, the co-presidents of the WEA and some other teachers. We have nurses. We have all the principals, all the directors. We have key people such as facilities or busing or technology. And I'm sure I'm forgetting some others, but in any event, we're considering, we sort of split up the work because there's so much of it to consider. But we're trying to think about every single angle. We're learning lessons from our remote teaching and learning experience in this past spring, and we're learning from those, and we're incorporating those into the plan for the fall. Should we need either partial or full virtual again, and in all other aspects of reopening for the fall, there's different people assigned to different subcommittees. Another point that will affect things is the state's designations of red, yellow, or green. And as we all know, it's soon, allegedly to be green. And whether or not that continues in August is not clear, but we're proceeding like it will. And then we have, let's just say, plenty of guidelines shared with us from a number of highly reputable sources. The Centers for Disease Control is an obvious one. The Department of Education talks about teaching and learning. school boards and the PSEA have talked about some logistical matters. There are just an incredible number of pages of guidelines for us to try to process, try to see how applicable they are to us, and then try to incorporate them into our plan. So our priorities as we move forward here. This one speaks for itself, the health, safety, and well-being of all the humans in the school, students and staff alike. A priority is instructional rigor and excellence. We are aware of the fact that it wasn't as rigorous as some would like in the spring, and we would agree that, and if to some extent we have to do virtual in the fall, we're going to get back to that. And we want to inject, whenever we can, some flexibility for families and staff members. And we're going to talk about that in a little bit. So those are our priorities those are in a sense the lenses we use to try to examine our options moving forward. So our options for fall in terms of the big picture, number one, option number one would be all students back at once every day, just like normal, with a large number of precautions in place. And we're going to talk more about that. Option number two we're thinking about is have some students back on a given day with the rest of the students home experiencing or having a virtual experience that day. And there are a number of different angles that can take. And option number three is to have no students back, which would be entirely virtual, such as we did this past spring. And we'll talk about the pros and cons of that in a second as well. So option one. It's the most normal of the three options, needless to say. The thing about option one, which is all students back, it's going to require some substantial precautions. As we all know, we're all taking those same precautions in our personal lives. But in a school environment, some compromises are going to be necessary. For example, 6 feet distancing, which we know is supposed to be the guideline for as often as we can in our own personal lives, is just not going to be as frequent with everyone in the building as it would be if half the kids were in the building. So there's a little bit of a trade-off. We know that this is the best option for teaching and learning and also for social well-being, and none of those things need to be discounted. They're all very, very important. So frankly, we're leaning this way, at least to start off the year right now. As I said earlier, no decisions are made, but we're leaning towards all students back with the precautions. This is a reason why. It's not the only reason, but indeed it's the best option for child care considerations, which are important. Option two is a hybrid, some version of a hybrid. Possible versions include every other day, A or B day, or split sessions, etc. None of these are easy to implement. Allows for more precautions while at school. For example, 6 feet distancing more frequent. You have that many fewer kids. It's not possible all day, but it's more likely if fewer kids are at school at once. This is okay for teaching and learning, but we're feeling that going back and forth between in-person and virtual is tricky for teaching and learning. It's not impossible. It's definitely possible. It's just not as ideal. And then this creates a moderate child care burden for families and staff, depending on which version we take. If it's every other day, that's tricky. If it's every morning, that might be a little easier. If it's every Thursday and every second Tuesday, that's awful. So we know that child care burden steps up quite a bit with option two. And then option three is what's known as fully virtual, all students at home, which is what we did in the spring. We want this as an option, and actually, frankly, we're planning for this as an option for some families. We're going to ask that families choose this option, and we'll talk about that later, by a certain time, and choose it by semester. Can't go back and forth between virtual and in person. But we do need the flexibility, and we also need to be ready for this for all students should conditions go back to red. Should something happen and somebody tells us we have to shut down, we need to be ready to go with full virtual. As we learned in the spring, this option is not first choice in the long run for teaching and learning or social well-being. And as everybody experienced, this is rough for childcare. Okay, so some ongoing work. There are still many, many details to be worked out, and we'll talk about some tonight, and some were brought up in the questions, and we're taking notes, and we're conferring all the time. We have what I'll call tonight 2 essential questions and then some other important challenges that I want to just list for everybody. So essential question number 1. I'm frankly really struggling with this one, which is to say what to do about masks. Lots of research out there that talks about this evolving to be the number 1 most effective protective measure to combat the spread of it. And the thing about masks is it's a in large part a matter of courtesy to others. Masks are found to protect others more than actual wear of the mask. And actually, I'm thinking a lot about the courtesy piece and how that fits nicely with our various schools' themes of paying it forward, helping others, looking out for others, that kind of thing. So eventual decisions could vary with the level. We certainly know that it's easier for somebody 6 or 16 rather to wear a mask than 6. It's not easier for either one. It's just relatively easy. It could be the case that K to 5 students are encouraged or maybe required when practical. So that means not required when you're eating lunch. That means not required when you're having speech therapy lessons. That means not required if you're 6 years old, you just can't take it anymore. But when practical, again, 6 to 12, otherwise secondary students are going to be probably either strongly encouraged or required when practical, the same sort of thing. And then for staff members, all adults, we're leaning towards masks or quite possibly face shields, a good option whenever practical. Again, we're not going to have someone with a mask on when they're eating their lunch, but whenever it's practical, it's a good idea. And I should note before we move on from masks that they will be required on buses at all times. We have busing as the next topic, but feel very strongly that the confined space of a bus is going to need a mask. And if people are just objecting to that or what have you, then there's options for busing. But we feel very strongly that masks will be required on buses at all times. The second essential question of 2 is what to do about busing. It's incredibly complicated. That if we're going to maximize distancing, which is our goal, it's really hard on a confined bus. We're going to follow some recommendations. There's either spreading students out 2 or 1 to a seat, or maybe keeping windows open, masks all the time. We're going to consider moving from a double tiering protocol we have now, which everybody knows we get all the secondary kids in on the same bus run, middle and high school together. And then we get the next tier, which is all the elementary kids at the same time. That's double tiering. We're thinking about a possible quadruple tiering to help with distancing, to get that many fewer kids on every bus. It would look like a high school run, a middle school run, and then 2 independent elementary runs. It would be 2 schools at once, and then the other 2 schools. So as you can imagine, that might require some slight adjustments to building schedules, start and stop times. Way too many details right now. We don't know what that is right now, but we're thinking about it if we feel that distancing on buses is that much important. And then we're very, very concerned about availability of bus drivers. And frankly, it could impact our ability to provide busing, period. It could be the case that there just aren't enough bus drivers able and willing to drive. Some other important challenges. There are many, many other ones, and we've identified some already tonight. Examples we're working on, we're social distancing. We feel that we can get 4 feet almost always with the type of furniture we have. We need to get some more individual desks as opposed to group tables. We need to turn the desks all facing one way if we can. We might get some plastic partitions if we just can't avoid having a table. But we don't believe that 6 feet is possible with everyone in the school at once. We believe that 4 feet is. Now, is that ideal? No. But we feel like that with masks and protocols that we're going to talk about, it's a reasonable compromise. We know that lunch is a tricky time. Everyone in one confined space at once eating, so therefore no masks on, is a problem. So we're going to have to solve that. And it could be eating lunch in the classrooms, or it could be many fewer at once in the cafeteria, many possibly outside, I'm not sure. Athletics is a challenge. I'm pretty sure we're not going to be playing football with masks on. And so while football is outdoors, that helps. That's pretty close contact a lot during the game. And things like weight training can be moved outdoors a little bit, but not great, and inclement weather, that sort of thing. Transitions during the day, both elementary and secondary. Everybody who's been in the high school knows that it's Grand Central Station in between periods. And I'm not really sure how we're going to solve that yet, but we're going to have to figure that out. And then, of course, in the elementary, if we spaced all the kids out 6 feet while they're trailing their teacher down to this room or that, we'd have a locomotive. We need 3 locomotives to get that whole train through the hallway. It'd be so long. So we have some challenges with transitions. We have challenges with encore and related arts classes, such as music. We know we can't have 25 kids in a room singing all at once. That's one of the most well-known, so we say, high chances of transmitting the disease. However, we can do music different ways. You can make music class fun without some singing. Maybe we go outdoors. Maybe we don't have kids come to the music room. Maybe we take music on a cart to the class, that sort of thing. We have some very real staffing challenges. We're going to talk about timeline here in a second, but once we finalize a plan for ourselves, it's going to be quite likely that some staff won't be interested in participating, won't be able to. We're going to try to accommodate as best we can with some options for virtual, but just hiring enough staff is going to be a challenge. And then the last one I put on here, certainly not the last important challenge, but there are many nursing and medical matters to figure out. What happens if somebody is sick during the day? What happens if they have a fever? Do we quarantine them in a separate room? Or are they in the nurse's suite? Are we going to check temperatures of everybody every day? I'm leaning towards no on that. Et cetera, et cetera. You can imagine there's just dozens and dozens of important questions that need to get answered. So moving forward, over the next 3 weeks, we're going to have some focus groups put together of parents banded together, kind of grade level, I think is a good idea. Have some student groups, maybe middle and high school anyway. And we'll have follow-up surveys of everybody. And the important part there is we're going to ask the questions in a little more precise manner than we already have. We've asked the questions once, like, hey, generally speaking, what do you feel about the fall? We're going to be able to say, okay, here, option 1 looks like this. Option 2 looks like that. And given that, where would you be in the fall? And so those are going to be follow-up surveys to everybody, parents and staff and students alike in the coming 3 weeks. We have a board meeting already scheduled for July 20th to take care of a number of approval matters for the Stony Creek project and some other things. And now we need that meeting also to review and approve the plans that are required by the state. So essentially, if tonight's the 22nd, we have about 4 weeks or so to finalize the plans. And believe me, the state has pages and pages of plans we have to come up with. And by the way, we have to just submit them. They don't approve anything, but that's kind of weird. But anyway, but they do require board approval at the local level. So we'll do that. We'll aim for that on July 20th. And then we're having the end of July, the 31st is deadline for commitments from families and staff. I mentioned flexibility. Our intent is to have it flexible so that if a family just takes a look at what we can do or what we're thinking about doing and just decides it's not for them for whatever reason, don't have to have a reason, don't have to share the reason with us. They can choose to go fully virtual, and we're setting up an option for that. And we have that option now existing at the secondary level with the WSD Virtual Academy. And we're creating an option at the K-5 level with our own elementary teachers for families who just don't feel like sending the students to school for whatever reason. Maybe they have somebody at home who's terribly compromised, or they're just not comfortable. No reason required. But we do need to have a commitment on that by the 31st. And so before the 31st, we need to share a lot of details of what exactly it looks like before people can decide. And then keep going. We go to August 7th, where we'll finalize staff assignments based on the answers we get from families. A couple weeks we normally need to finalize student assignments, who's in what class, and get those out to everybody. It's always a popular time. The week of the 24th, we'll have a number of staff training sessions set up, either training or just awareness. Hand washing protocols was brought up. That's a good one. What are we doing for lunch? What are we doing for passing time? All that kind of thing. And then August 31st, we plan right now to welcome everyone back to school. And to school, I mean literally to school, not to virtual school. So the conclusion, we commit to communicating as often and as comprehensively as we can. We've been trying to do that. It's very challenging, but I can just tell you we're trying as best we can. We certainly appreciate everybody's understanding and patience. I mean, this is hard for everybody, and we've got a lot of different opinions out there, professional opinions and others, as to what we should do as a district or a state or even as a nation. So we're trying to really balance all of those as best we can. And so that's the end, and we have questions.
Jim, thanks for this. So first off, I just wanted to ask, you described 3 options for the fall. And to what extent will the options that we end up doing be determined by the state versus being determined by us locally?
I would say that the state won't determine them. What might weigh into this, what will weigh into this, is what other districts in the county are doing. We're trying very hard as a county to be as unified as we can, as often as we can, because we know we share staff members across districts, and not that it has to be in total lockstep, but it would be really, really good if it could be as much as possible. So but it would be non-binding. A little example of something that might be a little more binding would be all of us who send our students to the North Monco Technical Career Center. Those districts probably do need to be on the same page and same approach just to make the North Monco experience work properly. But in the end, we're actually looking for more directions and more requirements than we got because frankly, we're looking for more cover and we didn't get that from anybody. So we're trying now to band together and do the best we can as a collaborative.
Okay, now I suspect that pretty much everyone on the panel here has questions. And so to manage it, what I'm thinking about doing is just maybe rotating through the board members and student reps who are on my screen in order from left to right as they appear on my screen. And the first person in the upper left-hand corner is Ron Stoloff, who I think was just about to ask a question anyway.
Yeah, have you considered, instead of moving the students between classes, move the teachers? Now, I know there's a logistical problem with that, and you'd have to probably get the trucks to carry it. But that might reduce the whole traffic, but it also may raise the stress on the students having to sit in a class for multiple periods.
The answer there, Ron, is yes, that we are considering that very strongly for elementary level and maybe a little bit of middle. As soon as you get into the high school environment where different students take different classes at different times with different levels, it breaks down.
Joe, you're muted, Joe.
Oh, sorry. Okay, thanks, Ron. Next up in my video grid here, I have Zephy. Zephy, you have a question or any questions?
I do. Thank you, Joe. I have actually 2 questions. One is for the focus groups, how will you be designing or kind of constructing those focus groups? Who will be moderating, and how will we see the output of that? And along similar lines, I thought maybe we would get a sneak peek on the survey results that were for the survey that was done just a couple of weeks ago on this matter. So when will we be getting that information or getting some insights from that?
Okay. On the first one, the focus groups, haven't gotten that far yet. I will confer with the principals as to how to select some probably I would envision like K-2 parents in one group, 4 to 5, middle and high school. I'm not sure about that. I don't know. The format will be probably something like this. Certainly not be in person. And the share out, I'm going to need to volunteer some people to help me gather the input from that and process it. It'll be on the task force matter. We have a communication or a technology task force team that will help with that. The survey results from the previous survey we do have, and we're compiling them a little bit, processing. I think Gary's going to plan on, Gary, you can chime in if this is not correct, but tomorrow, I think, or maybe the next couple days, share out. They were primarily about the experiences with the spring, the teaching and learning, the virtual. So they're not as much about planning for the fall logistically. They're really more helpful, and we are using them for planning for the virtual piece for the fall. The survey question that asked about, hey, how do you feel about fall generally? You know, would you come back or not? That needs to be parsed out a little bit more in a follow-up survey. It's not really helpful the way it is now.
Yeah, Jim, just to add a little bit, I would say that the overall messaging we got through the survey was that there was a general appreciation in the district for the efforts of the district to enact what we did during COVID-19 in the spring, and also a clear recognition that what we would do going forward in the fall or anytime during 2020-21 would be something we would start ramping up very quickly on day one whenever we would have to implement that, if we have to implement it. And clearly there would be a need to replicate more closely the typical day experience and the interaction between students, teachers, and students with each other in the setting. Even though it's remote, that was certainly a recognition in the survey results. And there are more details, little details, but overall there's a recognition that we will definitely have to ramp up the experience for students in terms of rigor, and also in terms of interactions with teachers and with their classmates to more closely replicate the experience of what happens in the classroom. That's definitely to maintain pace with the curricular program we typically have, and also to ensure that students are being graded, they're being assessed regularly, they're getting feedback, and they're attending on a regular basis. Student accountability will be much tighter and would need to be in order to go forward. So those are the kind of things that the survey pointed out, and it's kind of what we expected. And it will be used as kind of guidance moving forward, but not as a, not to replicate anything in the past. We're looking forward to something different, something we've now learned from.
All right, thanks, Gary. Tracy?
All right, so I have a few things. First, if we had to go fully virtual, are we prepared with all of the computers to have everybody have a computer?
Yes.
Okay. Second, have we started or have we thought about starting after Labor Day as an option if we need a little bit more time to put things together?
I actually thought about starting earlier than the 31st because as some private schools are doing to possibly compress the semester a little bit. I feel like the earlier the better, but we do need all that, like you suggest, we need some time to get it all together. So I think the 31st is a sweet spot this year. I suppose it could change if we find that there's just too much to get together between now and then, but I don't think it will.
Okay, and then I know we have very, very long parent drop-off lines at most of the schools. So have we thought about, since we are thinking that busing might be an issue, going to parents and saying, are you going to be driving your kid to school 98% of the time? You know, there might be a day here or there where they're just not able to do it, but we do have a very, very large portion of kids that are driven to school every day, and we should probably take that into account when we're trying to figure out this busing. Because it could make, one school could have a lot more kids that are driven and that might make a difference.
Yeah, we have actually thought quite a bit about transportation in general and car lines included. Car lines are everybody's favorite topic anyway. And we anticipate them only getting worse, or I should say longer, with the busing, because that'll be part of a survey for sure. I don't know that we can necessarily force people to commit. We can get a sense, a flavor though.
Yeah, like I said, there's going to be times where you might be driving your child to school every day and, something comes up and you just can't do it on a certain day or whatever.
Right.
That happens. But for a lot of these parents, I know, from being in the schools, that a lot of these parents, they drive their kids to school every single day. So one of the other things I wanted to bring up was, and so I think somebody brought this up in one of the questions, I would be totally against the middle school and high school being virtual while the elementary schools would go to in-school learning. That was something that I don't know where that came from. I've had a couple of parents ask me that question. That would definitely be a no for me if it was put out to us. I would not want the middle school and high school to be virtual and the elementary schools to go back to physical school.
I can tell you on that one, I can tell you that is something that's typically considered by districts everywhere, and very few, if any, are pursuing it, and we're not.
Yeah, I just think that's an awful decision, that one.
I agree.
I would say that, just from being in the schools, I would say, and you've already know, that elementary lunches really need to be addressed. Those kids sometimes are packed in like sardines at those tables. So whether we do, 6 different lunches or however that needs to work out, but those kids in elementary schools are packed at those lunch tables. The knuckle at the high school, I don't know what you're going to do with that one.
Everybody behaves all the time in the knuckle. I don't know what the
It's
problem.
not even behaving. It's the amount of people that are passing through that knuckle at the same time. It's worse than like rush hour on the Schuylkill.
No question. That's the one that always comes up, and we don't have a solution for that yet.
Okay. And then my other issue would be nursing. That's something that we really have to look at, because if a nurse is handling someone who has a fever, might be positive, like, I don't know how we're going to do it, but that nurse obviously has to be wearing PPE, but she's also dealing with immune compromised kids that are coming to the nurse every day for their regular issues. And to have those kids crossing each other is not going to be, I know that as a parent of somebody who is immune compromised, that would be a huge worry for me as a parent. And then one other thing I was going to say is, I was talking to Kristen Rawlings about opening a store for masks. Now, just throw it out there, put some masks on there. Parents can go on there and buy them at their leisure if they want. They would have the school emblems on them or whatever. But and then we could do like a pickup. I don't think that for something like this, if we're going to do it, that we should wait until the end, because parents are going to want to order now and be prepared, for the school season. So just, that's an idea. And then my last thing would be for the younger kids, thinking about having them group together and having their groups stay together. So I know right now, sometimes we at the elementary schools, half of the kids from one class will go to gym at the same time another class is going to gym. I think those are the things that we're going to have to rethink how we do those.
Definitely.
All right. I think that's all I had to say.
Okay, thanks. Next up, I got Marshall.
Thank you, Joe. I have several different areas I just wanted to touch upon. A lot of it is based on different things I'm hearing from different people. and what we've experienced as a family in the school district. The first is in regard to the fact that it appears at some level there is going to have to be some virtual learning. It appears it will not be 100% in class, whether it's by necessity or by choice. Based on what we experienced in the spring, we want to make sure that our teachers and staff are equipped the best they can be under the circumstances. Will they be going through any type of additional training or given any type of additional help in getting ready for what will probably not be the traditional setting that we like to see on a year in and year out basis? Will they be going through anything like that?
Yes, and I would add, Marshall, that the experience of the spring, in spite of the fact that it was new to us, there was professional development offered to the teachers and provided to the teachers ongoing throughout the entire experience. I mean, through all those weeks, there was PD being offered and teachers were in attendance. I think that the acquisition of some of the skills for asynchronous learning, those were new tools that needed to be learned. But certainly the expectations in the spring were not what we expect going forward. And we will continue to offer PD for our staff to keep making sure that they have the tools and strategies they need to have an engaging remote teaching learning experience. We know that there are ways to do that. We are even learning that in administrative circles in terms of meetings we're conducting. How do you engage? How do you keep people focused? And how do you make sure that it's productive learning going on? So yes, that will definitely continue.
All right. And coupled with that, we obviously know that communication and transparency is really the key to any success. So the next, I think, logical question is, in order to make sure that if we have students who are not in class, will we make sure to some extent that they will be able to communicate on a regular basis as they see fit with their teachers or support staff, such as either designated times or opportunities so that they get feedback when they request it within a reasonable time to know that either they're getting assignments as they should be, or they're getting necessary feedback or help in their assignments?
Yes, so this spring we offered the office hours. Every teacher had office hours 2 hours a day, once before noon, once after noon, and they were published to students so they would know when they were occurring. And students did take advantage of that. Some did, some did not. The survey indicates that about 50% of our students use that service at least once or twice a week. And we see that continuing. We're not sure whether it would be 2 hours a day or if it'd be 1 hour, but posted so that students have access to that. But definitely we know that's an important component, needs to be there so students have access and can get clarification when needed.
All right. On a practical level, if our hope is to get as many students back into the schools as possible, has there been any thought or discussion about using larger size rooms in order to teach classes, whether it's the auditoriums, the gymnasiums, the cafeterias, or even outdoor facilities, to try and social distance the kids to alleviate any either risk or concern on the part of parents and caregivers?
Yes. Yeah, we are looking at that at all levels. Might be a little more acute at the elementary level, but that's definitely an option.
All right. I know I have other areas to discuss, but I know everybody else does as well. So I'll defer to them, and I'm sure we'll discuss this further. Thanks.
All right, thanks. Paul?
Thanks, Joe. I do have a couple of questions. The first one, I wanted to piggyback off of Marshall's last point about using larger spaces. To encourage social distancing and get a little bit more space in between students, have we considered adding additional modular space, as we've done temporary space at Stony Creek and in other places during the renovation periods? Is that an option that we've looked into at all?
Not extensively, no. I suppose it is an option. It would be really tough at this point to make that happen. But it's something we can look at real quick if it has any viability. I don't know, Wade, do you have any sense of whether that's viable at this time?
I think again, I think it would be very, very difficult to pull off, but the space itself would still need a teacher, so I'm not sure. We have spaces for each one of our classrooms. I'm not sure what that additional space would leverage just for us. So we'd have to come to consensus on that if we decided to pursue it. And maybe we could get it, maybe we wouldn't be able to, I'm not sure.
Okay. It was mentioned that we may consider temperature testing of students. That's an option on the table. Do we have any more widespread testing options that are being considered of students and faculty on a regular basis?
We are looking at, there's some good technology out there that corporations are implementing it's essentially for people, all people entering the building. It does pose some problems for schools in the sense that it would require one point of entry, or I suppose two if you wanted to double up the technology. And one of the things, and our nurses are really examining this on the task force and trying to get a sense of where their colleagues are and their professional organizations are. One of the tricky things is if oftentimes people who transmit it are asymptomatic at the time. And so so we could take temperatures and then if we catch, if 3 people have a temperature that day, okay. So we would immediately quarantine them and get them right home. Then there's quite possibly some other kids in the building who might have it and just not be symptomatic. That's not a reason not to do it, and we are still considering it, but I just wanted to share with you kind of some of our thinking on the pros and cons.
That's helpful. And I agree, there's not going to be a 100% catch-all option for any of these, but I do believe it would help to strongly reduce the chances, which is all that we can hope to do, reduce as many chances as possible. Along with that, in terms of cleaning, sanitizing, disinfecting, do we have a proactive plan in place or that's being looked into that will help to ensure that our properties are being cleaned often and regularly to disinfect against possible contamination?
We do. Wade, you want to say a little bit about what you and Jerry are thinking along those lines?
Yeah, so at this point, what we're doing is 2 parts. One, we're planning, and then the other thing is we're trying to acquire just loads and loads of material in the event that we have trouble getting it later. So all the disinfectants and all the other material that would help us in accomplishing that during the school year, we don't want to run out. So we're looking at volumes right now and trying to pre-purchase as much as possible, storing it. The protocols for the cleaning, Jerry's got under control as well, but that's what we're doing right now.
Thank you. And my last question is a little bit more broad, but just wondering from what our neighboring schools may be doing, what their best practices are. I know that you are in the administration's in contact with them on a regular basis. Is there anything that's being done that's drastically different than what we're doing? Is everyone pretty much coordinating and in agreement? Where do we stand versus the other districts?
I would say that if you count the Montgomery County districts, we're all very close and in pretty decent lockstep on purpose, and we meet almost daily. If you cross over county lines, interestingly enough, other counties have a Department of Health that take a little different tack than ours does, and I'll use an example: Bucks County. Bucks County Department of Health issued some guidance to schools that I don't know what the right descriptor is, but it was very easygoing in terms of how restrictive they're going to be with precautions. And they basically directed the Bucks County to get going and don't do this and don't worry about that. And we don't have any such guidance like that here in Montgomery County. So one of the themes of the questions that are coming through is, who on your staff is an epidemiologist, or like what experts do you have? And the answer is, when it comes to something like an expert opinion on something to do with the virus, we go right to the Department of Health or perhaps the Centers of Disease Control. and we take our direction from the Department of Health. So for example, another theme of the question is, hey, what happens if somebody tests positive in one of the schools? Okay, that's not going to be our call. We're going to go right to the Department of Health. Hey, we got this person tested positive. What do we do? And they, we're not going to choose to quarantine for 0 or 2 or 5 or 14 days. It'll be, when it comes to matters of medical expertise, it's going to be the experts in these agencies that direct us, not our people, putting their expertise out there. They're generalists in schools. They're not epidemiologists. So we take our direction from people who are.
Great, thank you.
All right, thanks, Paul. Ronnie?
Okay, thanks, Joe. I just have a question. Do we know, or have we been in contact with families that will have students going into kindergarten?
Good question. Very, very popular theme. The answer is no, we haven't yet. We are, as soon as school ended, we were able to switch out seniors. Sorry to any seniors who are out there, and switch in incoming kindergartners, and then they get on our distribution list. So we're going to include them on all future surveys. We're going to include them on all future communications. We just haven't been able to do that because we have their email addresses. They're just awaiting official status, but we know it's important and we're going to do that.
Okay, that's my main question. Thank you.
Okay, next up I got David.
Thanks, Joe. Most of my concerns have been covered already. Thanks to Paul and Marshall. I was concerned about spatial restrictions and constraints also. I had a question as far as the busing strategy goes. Are we going to be able to execute that with the existing number of drivers that we've used in the past, or just run them more frequently, or do you anticipate needing more drivers?
Possibly a little of both. I'm going to let Wade elaborate.
Mr. Frank, your question's right on. We cannot double tier without a change in either doubling the number of bus drivers, which we don't have, nor does the region have, or we have to change the bell schedule. So those are the two options if we decided to go to a 4-tier.
Okay, that's all I have. Thanks.
All right, next up, Amy.
Thanks, Joe. To follow up on Ronnie's question, what have we done to really advertise, like, for example, tonight's meeting to incoming kindergarten families? Like, where was it made available so that they were know? I heard from several that they were unaware of tonight's meeting.
They did not receive a direct communication via email or anything. This was widely advertised through all of our normal channels, newspapers required, social media, website, at the first thing you click on. Those are, I would say social media was our relied upon for people who don't get direct emails. And then as we talked about, incoming kindergarten families will get direct emails very, very soon.
Okay. And so we talked about bus drivers, and we may not have enough bus drivers, but what about teachers? So if we have teachers that may choose to teach remotely or may choose not to come back due to COVID, do we have sufficient subs? I imagine it won't be just our district, but other districts fighting for the same pool of subs.
Kathy Rossi has magical ways of getting staff members into the district. Kathy, you want to say a few words on what you know or what your colleagues are talking about with regard to HR developments?
I mean, we're all in the same boat. We all have meetings weekly regarding staffing and other issues related to what every district is dealing with. We are right now hiring additional staff with no specific determination of where they'll be placed, just knowing in advance that there'll be issues that will come up. So, with that, we have to be careful too, because we have a budget that we're trying to stay within. So we are also going to be proposing increasing our substitute teacher rate at the July meeting. So there are some things that we are doing, but we're not the only ones. So as soon as I raise my rate, I'm sure someone else will up me. But that's kind of how it works right now.
As far as the busing issue, have we considered, I believe we've talked about this before, that our walker distance, like we're well under the distance that we're allowed to have for walkers. Are we considering, not that I want to see more kids walking, but are we considering increasing that distance to have less children on the buses?
Wade, that one looks like it's perfect for you.
So we have considered it. So one of the pickles that we have is based on where a couple of our schools are, specifically Bluebell and Shady Grove being on Sumneytown. Skippack, excuse me, it's going to be very, very difficult to have any more walkers, no matter what our distance requirement is. And so Stony, there would be a great ability to increase walkers, and I'm not sure how much the payoff would be if we did it. Lower Gwynedd would be the same, the middle school a little bit maybe, but again, most of the people for the middle school and the high school don't have any ability to walk because they're all over the district. So it's a great thought. If we had more sort of schools like Stony, probably it would be something more to consider, but I don't know that it's going to yield enough if we increased it to make it worthwhile, but I am considering making that part of the proposal.
Okay. And then have we been in touch with the YMCA at all to see what their plans are for the before and after care program?
Wait, do you want to take that one? I have not.
So the YMCA is running a summer program, and I've had conversations with them about the summer program. Previously, their overall director of the site had asked for additional space, which is another requirement or another request that we get pretty much every single year. So I'm positive that they are planning to provide their program, and I'm sure that they would like additional space, but we always have the pickle, which is there is a footprint issue that we have at the schools if we give more to the YMCA and what the resultant problems that are created because of it. So I will confirm the YMCA that they're having their program, but it is near 100% that is going to be happening.
Okay, and do we know, I guess, are we going to have any discussions with them about how they're going to implement that program? Like how many students are going to be in it? Are they going to be able to take on new students like kindergartners that are coming in or siblings?
Yeah, so it's the same issue as we've had in the past, which is that there's clearly more demand than there is supply. And that's not really unique even to Wissahickon, but I don't think we're going to be solving that this year. As to how they actually determine who's entered and who isn't entered into their program, usually we stay out of it because that's their program, not ours.
And then I also just wanted to ask, so you mentioned earlier a little bit about, this is Jim, I think, mentioned that we're going to leave certain decisions up to the Department of Health, like if we would have an actual case in school, but have we had any guidance from them at all? Like if we would have a positive test result, like what happens?
No, you're raising a good question. That's what the superintendents of Montgomery County and including me have been begging for is what we really do need is a little structure for questions like that, because they're getting asked, those questions are getting asked often, understandably, and we don't want to give an answer now and have to change it later because we guessed wrong. So we really are pressing them as much as we can for an answer. As soon as we get that, we'll roll that into the plan of what reopening looks like.
And do you anticipate that they will be giving some guidance? Because I feel like if we had a positive case and then we had to wait for them to get back to us to tell us what to do, that could.
Yeah, so if you recall, we had a tiny bit of that in the spring before everything shut down. It wasn't necessarily we had a staff person involved. In the spring, the number of cases were so small, we could get to somebody in the Montgomery County Department of Health real quick and get an answer. It was almost like a hotline. If they have that same setup in the fall, okay, great. But I that struck me as a triage type response rather than a standard operating protocol. So I think they need the latter, and I'm not sure that they even have it yet. But we're as nicely as we can after them almost daily to please get us that answer.
And are we going to be requiring of students, like, it seems like COVID has very varied symptoms, and some seem like things that are just very common, like a stomach flu or a fever that may be associated with a cold. Are we going to be requiring students to have a COVID test depending on what symptoms they may have at school and are sent home, or the reason they're staying home sick before returning to school?
Yeah, I'm not sure about the answer of requiring a COVID test. That's one of the ones we're still trying to get some clarity on. We know, of course, there'll be an expanded effort to persuade or beg people to stay home if they don't feel well, and you know, the typical formula for returning home is if, you know, you feel better now, you have a buffer day, that kind of thing. I don't know if that will change at all from this. I think we're going to need some guidance on when leaving school, and if you have to stay away from school for however many days, and then how many days before you get to come back, and also contacts and family. I mean, there's just a lot of, it brings me back to the spring when we were doing all this contact tracing. And that's actually another big question. Who is going to be responsible for doing the contact tracing now? There was some suggestion that the schools would be responsible. And I had tried to say in as many words, that's going to be frankly impossible for us to do unless we hire a whole army of contact tracers. That is one of those things that the Department of Health is going to have to decide and give us guidance on.
And if we're really encouraging students to stay home if they're not feeling well, I know currently I think it's 10 days that you have, and then you get the letter in the mail. Are we going to be increasing the number of days?
Oh, we're going to just send letters to everybody. Hey, where are you? And what's wrong with you? And yeah. You're raising a very good question. I'm not sure about that. A question was asked in a different context. Will there be more excused days or something like this? And I don't know the answer, but we need to get that out. That won't necessarily impact people's decision of whether to come back to school or not in the fall, but it is important information people need to know. And as soon as we know it ourselves, we'll certainly share it.
And also, will we be having, like, right now I know there's notes that come home, like if somebody's sick in the class and they have a contagious disease, will we be adding any sort of other categories so that parents can be informed if someone is sick in the class?
I would say yes. I mean, to the extent this is just like one of those highly communicable things that we always send home letters about, we would just add this to the list.
Okay. I don't think I have anything else. Thank you.
All right, thanks. Student board reps, you guys got questions? Olivia?
So first, I just have a comment, which is kind of addressing what you were just talking about. High school students, a lot of them are really, really bad at staying home when they're sick, just because it's like, I know for myself, I'm guilty of this. It's incredibly stressful to miss tests and to miss getting assignments, because then it's like, a lot of times the teachers expect you come into your next class with the homework, but I don't know how to do the homework because I missed the lesson today, or I missed a test and now I have to reschedule it, but I don't have enough time in my schedule, or I don't take a study hall. So I think, like, I don't know, there needs to be some sort of reassurance to those students that like all of their teachers are going to work with them and like really, really emphasize that to get kids to stay home when they're sick, because like all of my friends, like they'll be a mess in school and I'll be like, oh, like absolutely not, I have a calc test later. So that's the first thing. Then questions, one I think should be easy to answer, and that's just sports like golf and tennis and things that are okay to play now. Are those going to go ahead even if you have to say no to sports like football and soccer that are higher contact?
At the moment, there actually won't, I mean, let me rephrase that. My hope this morning was that everyone would take up either cross country or track and field and take it like a major conditioning outdoor competitions season. I don't think it's going to happen. So things like golf and tennis are certainly possible. There is much of what happens in athletics is governed by the State Athletic Association. And our athletic director, who you know, Mr. Cairns, is in touch with his colleagues all the time. There will be some guidelines put forth for contact sports, and I think there will be some distinction between non-contact and contact sports. I just don't know right now.
Okay. And then the other question, like probably don't have an exact answer to now, but we talked a lot about earlier in the year about the sleep schedule and the sleep studies, and we had that meeting. So with the quadruple tier of busing, if we do that, were you thinking about making, I know right now we have it so that elementary schools start and end later to give like the high school students time to kind of take care of their younger siblings if that's necessary, but in this, with this tiering, would you consider making it so like high school kids come to school later on that like list of the different buses that
Well,
are?
Olivia, if I'm hearing you correctly, you're selling out the middle school students to favor you and your friends at high school. The answer to that is actually Mr. Coleman's idea was to have the high school start slightly later, if in a draft form. It's not going to be substantially, and it's not going to really address the previous conversation we've had. But your comment is very well taken, and there will be a slight adjustment. Nothing that is going to be earth-shattering.
Okay. Thank you. That's all.
Okay. How about Morgan? You got any comments, questions? Hey, Morgan, you're on mute.
Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Okay, so one of the questions that I had was regarding if students are able to, or if students contract the COVID or even staff. So how do we go about like identifying the kids that he came in contact with? And then what about those kids that he came in contact with, the kids that they came in contact with? Do we just like, did everyone just go home, or do we just send those students that he came in contact with home?
Well, Morgan, you just spelled out one of the biggest challenges we have, essentially contact tracing, and then what to do with information you get when you're done doing all the tracing. I don't have an answer for you, but it's a really good question that we are going to get answers to, and we will share them as soon as we have them.
Okay. Another question I had was regarding sports. It was kind of close to what Olivia was saying, but how do different like sports, like contact sports, like you were saying earlier, is that totally just out of like the realm of like possibility? Contact sports like football, basketball.
The answer is right now, no. It's actually not out of the realm of possibility. Districts all over are trying to work this out in a way that makes sense. We have our summer workouts. We have a district plan that talks about what the summer looks like, and they'll go into effect July 1st. And there'll be outside only, as an example, outside only workouts. You know, if you're going to lift weights, you clean stuff off, you actually move the machines outside. In terms of the rest of the season, when competitions start, I don't know exactly what that looks like just now, but I can tell you that the plan is to move forward with all the athletics as normal with these precautions.
Well, like you had said earlier, how do you go about practicing for indoor sports, like say basketball? Because I know that the high school we don't have courts outdoors. So how do we accommodate indoor sports?
It's a good question. You're talking about a winter season sport, and you're 2 steps ahead of me as usual. I'm barely getting my fall sports together. So you and I will have a conversation as soon as I figure out what's going on in the fall.
Sounds good. Another question that I had was, what about like, since we're playing sports, any type of activities may get involved with other schools. So what if other schools, like students at their school, contract the virus? And how do we go about that?
Morgan, I think you might have been a fly in the wall when the PIAA was talking about all these things, because you're raising all the same exact questions that the athletic directors are raising. And they're really good questions. And the answer is, in that case, the competition would shut down, just like that other district's school would have to shut down. But that's part of the contact tracing too. You know, if you just finished playing a sport against somebody from some other district and they got tested positive, that contact tracing should jump over district lines to talk about all the people in the sport you just played against. So, and it goes for other activities as well. I mean, you're gonna have to trace what happened when you went to your job at ShopRite or where, you know, whatever. So it's just a really tricky, delicate balance.
That's all the questions I had. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Alex?
Hi, I wanted to know that if we went to option 2, would it be possible to have our core subjects taught in the classroom and possibly electives virtually?
Gary, I'll let you chime in, but that's, yes, Alex, that is an option. I'm not sure we're going to go towards option 2, but if we did, I like your thinking there. Gary, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I think all these options are things that have been mentioned and talked about. I think what gets particularly complex is at the high school, keeping a schedule of some sort that's predictable, and knowing that students' core subjects are spread throughout the day. I'm not sure that that's easily accomplished, but it's certainly something that the group will talk about.
Thank you. And one last question. I was wondering if we are having more virtual learning, will we be able to incorporate more synchronotic learning, as I found out live classes would make learning much easier?
Yes, I believe that we would definitely have more synchronous opportunities because we've heard loud and clear the importance of students interacting with their teachers on a more regular basis, and also opportunities for students to interact with one another much like they do in the classroom. So these, again, are lessons learned from the spring, and moving forward, we're trying to build that into our plan.
Okay, that's great. Thank you.
Thanks. So we kind of went through one cycle of board members and student board reps with questions. I think this has been helpful for me, just the opportunity to hear the discussion, hear some of the questions, some of the responses from the administration. And I think we all recognize that not everything is figured out yet. There's a lot of stuff that's TBD, and there are a lot of things that could potentially change. But I think it's important to give folks some insight into the thought process that's going on as we try to figure this out, as well as to understand some of the considerations and what the possibilities are. Jim, I know also in the public comments, in the first round of comments I read, and I've already seen some additional comments that have come in through this session while we've been talking. There are, again, more questions, and I don't think it's reasonable to expect that we're gonna have answers for all of them tonight. But what I would recommend and ask is that as a follow-up to this meeting, that you and the team can consolidate or kind of go through the various questions and try to kind of boil them down maybe into a frequently asked questions list that we can then write up some responses to and put out on the website for everyone to take a closer look at. Also, if we could establish like a primary webpage on the district website for COVID-19 school reopening information, I think that'd be helpful for everyone involved, as well as folks who may not have been able to make this meeting and don't have time to watch, you know, a 2-hour video.
I think that's a very good idea, Joe.
Yeah.
Joe,
Yep.
Joe, I have one other quick question, if it's okay.
Yeah, Paul.
Some concerns were raised previously about children having options in the course of a day to be able to go to the bathroom, to wash hands, to sanitize hands, things like that. I know it's been an issue at Stony in the past. Even some of our procedures, like allowing kids to have hall passes that when they go to the bathroom that could have cross-contamination issues and things like that. Are we relooking at some of those procedures to provide more options for kids to wash hands, sanitize hands, and do those things on a daily basis?
Yes, that's a very, very key part of the mitigation, and that's definitely being looked at all 6 buildings.
Great, thanks, Jim. That's all I had. Thanks, Joe.
Okay, thanks, Paul. Did someone else have something to say? Okay. So at this point, as I said, we've got a number of additional comments that were submitted during the course of the meeting. And I'm going to go through and read those comments in the order that I received them. So give me a minute to find what it is. And I'm going to warn you in advance, there's quite a list here. So I may have to summarize some of the lengthier ones. Okay, so the first one we've gotten is from Matt Coop, and it's a series of questions. Number one, please provide all the information that is informing your decisions about next school year. Children are at very low risk with this virus, so please share why alternate schooling is being deemed necessary. 2, what are you looking to achieve with these proposals? 3, please give concrete examples of how the school district will be addressing the mental health and well-being of students. Next question is from Mark Golditch. What role are epidemiologists playing in your assessment of the risks of reopening? The next comment is from Rachel Klein. And it says, I appreciate the opportunity to submit questions. I'm also glad the district is actively planning for the fall. Below are a few questions. 1, I did not hear that you mentioned student and parent representatives reflecting all grade level bands on the planning committees, K to 2, 3 to 5, 6 to 8, 9 to 12. If this is the case, why not? There are different issues to be tackled at different grade levels, making it critical stakeholders' voices are heard. 2, the instruction that was acceptable in the spring will not be acceptable in the fall. What is the school district providing? How is the school district providing systematic professional development in the design of online instruction so they can engage students in interactive and collaborative learning opportunities? What is the plan? How does it begin? Where are you drawing your research from to make these decisions? How do you measure rigor and excellence in the online environment? 3, how will the district, 3, how will the district implement continuity across grade levels or schools to support student navigation of online instruction? For instance, what directives will come from the administration related to technology support, technology tools, communication, and accommodations that will ensure continuity for parents, teachers, and students when navigating Schoology and the online environment? The next question is from Jodit Hashmi. My question is as follows. I hope the school district considers the health of children before anything else. Although many seem to think that COVID-19 is safe for kids, epidemiologists have repeatedly mentioned that all ages can carry the virus and children will be carrying the virus home, excuse me, to other family members who are immunocompromised, even if they themselves are healthy. If you do decide to open, I have 2 questions. 1, what options do you have for outdoor learning to minimize virus exposure and spread? 2, what options are you considering to minimize the loss of academic growth over the course of the year if we do have to go to remote learning? And the next question is from Shannon Taylor. I would just like to say that I am a teacher in Montgomery County, and I would love to have a split schedule for my personal children to limit their exposure of getting sick. However, Wissahickon School District would have to align with other Montco districts so that myself and my children were in school and home on the same days. Aside from the task force within the district, are you working with other school districts in the county to make the decision about the fall? Also, I noticed on my children's report cards that most of the grades were left blank and not assessed. I feel this is unfair to the students who work so hard to do their very best learning at home and then to not even receive credit for their efforts. Will this same grading system in the fall, will this be the same grading system in the fall if we are remote learning? The next is from Catherine Lefevre. Have face shields for all students and teachers been considered instead of masks? I worry about students with disabilities who have speech, auditory, and/or sensory issues. Next is for Yangxia Jia. We are wondering if the student will be given an option to stay home, regardless of what the school's decision is. If so, will there be asynchronous or synchronous, for example, Zoom-based learning support for these students? If the final decision requires students to be on campus, would it be possible to extend the time length of drop-off and pickup if parents do not want their children to take the bus? Next is from Anna Lal. Will you be including input from incoming kindergarten families in your focus groups and follow-up surveys? Also, can these families be added to the distribution list for updates from Dr. Crisfield? Next is from Heather Matt. Thank you to the board and Dr. Crisfield for holding this meeting tonight. I would be interested in participating in a focus group if possible. I have a first grader at Stony Creek Elementary and would love to be involved. Next is from Paula Bladek. Teachers lecturing / teaching through a mask is not conducive for students of all ages who have auditory processing or learning disability issues, especially of those that have been unidentified. Wearing the face shield is doable only with FM system being used in the class. Next is from Hope Helfeld. What about having trailers for schools to more socially distance? Next is another one from Mark Goldich. Will virtual be an option for parents to choose for their children, regardless of the other planned opening? In other words, you said you plan to be open for all on August 31st. Will there also be virtual if school is physically open on August 31? Next is from Kathleen Miller. Thanks for all of this info. I can only imagine how hard this is to navigate from a leadership perspective. My daughter is to enter kindergarten in the fall. I only found out about this meeting from Facebook. It would be great if info about the district, COVID-related and other, be sent to the incoming kindergarten class parents as well. The next is from Melissa Chargel. Incoming kindergarten parents were not informed of this meeting and did not get the survey. Is it possible that kindergarten will go to half days? The next is from Jamie Shapiro. Dr. Crisfield mentioned masks and face shields for students and staff, and I'm wondering, will the district provide these necessary PPE materials, or will students and staff be expected to provide their own? Next is from Peter Craer. Please update your email list to include parents of rising kindergartners, because I believe they are not currently receiving communications from the district. The next is another one from Stephen Lau. Questions. 1, what is the criteria for these extraordinary processes for school attendance to end? Are there clear guidelines for when this can end? 2, how do I get on a focus group? Next is from Shoshana Murray. How will students with GIEPs, IEPs, and 504s be accommodated? How will the district meet their FAPE/IDEA requirements? What allowance will be made for students with sensory issues? How will you ensure that special education students receive the services mandated in their IEPs? Next is from Mike Trichecki. Why aren't mandatory temperature checks part of the back to school criteria? They are relatively inexpensive, non-contact infrared camera systems that can be mounted at the entrances to screen children and staff who are running a fever. Most places of employment now incorporate these to pre-screen people before allowing entry. Next is from Gad Ages. Hi, is there any way to make parents dropping off / picking up kids turn off their engines while waiting to drop off time? From my experience, parents arrive a good 10 minutes before drop off starts and they keep their engines on. Can signs suggesting please no idling so people are aware of the environmental impact? The next is another one from Hope Helfeld. Each school will need to have 2 rooms, one for kids with temperature / cough and one for other students. It can be managed the same way it is done in doctor's offices and hospitals. Just my suggestion as a physician. Next is from Nicole Steitler. A few questions. Is it possible to do live feeds of teaching if we go back part-time? So kids would still have full-time teaching from teachers in the classroom, just rotating who is home and who is at school. What will be happening in the instance that a child / staff member tests positive? Will everyone who was in contact with that child / staff member then quarantine at home for the next 2 weeks? Next is from Lisa Carey. Is there any thought being given to repairing MS or US bathrooms, or I guess high school bathrooms, so that all sinks are working properly? I heard many reports about the lack of soap or running water in middle school and high school bathrooms last spring. I'm also curious whether or not additional cleaning people can be hired to clean during the day, or whether or not new cleaning equipment can be purchased in order to improve daily cleaning. Next is from Nuria Fernandez. I come from a country with public and free education, so I value your efforts to maintain the level and excellence of the education our district provides our children. That being said, my school day, including encore courses, runs from 7:30 a.m. to 1 p.m. with 3 recess and no lunch provided at school. In times like these, and considering the situation will last forever, will it be too much to ask to shorten the instruction day in a couple of hours and maybe have the children have lunch at their houses? One thing is to instruct, and a very different one is using schools as daycare facilities. Just an idea that you may like to run by the rest of the parents. Thank you for all of your efforts in this difficult time, and always, I appreciate that you put our students and teachers' safety first. The next is from Doug Bashore. I have a few comments and questions regarding school reopening. Social distancing is more complicated than physical distance. State designations do not reflect epidemiological guidance. 6 feet distancing is CDC guidance. The science around COVID is evolving. Think CDC guidance around masks. The reality is that distancing is primarily due to share air without adequate ventilation / air filtration to remove aerosolized viral particles / fomite. Question, what will be the school strategy when a student or a teacher tests positive? Question, how will the school district handle liability associated with school-based transmission? Question, temperature checks, why is there reluctance to perform temperature checks? Question, what will be the guiding principle for pivoting between options in the fall? Question, dilution is the solution to viruses. What are the considerations around utilization of outdoor space? Question, masks are not a courtesy. You should consider the utilization of this precautionary measure. Question for options 1, 2, and 3. Why can you not accommodate all of these options? Question, fall football / sports. Is that really a concern? And just to let you know, the questions were quite lengthy, so I had to try to summarize them as best I could. The next comment is from Jill Adjemian. I have a few questions to share. 1, could modular spaces be used for nursing? And 2, would a staggered start within each building be beneficial to establish norms with students just for week 1 and troubleshoot unexpected issues? 3, will parents be invited to participate in focus groups? 4, will curricular offerings be reduced, for example, electives? 5, will teachers be expected to teach students remotely and in person concurrently? The spring was beyond taxing, and I imagine burnout will become a concern. And she submitted a follow-up question in a separate email. One more thing, as a Bluebell family that lives directly across 73 from Symphony Lane, please create a walking option for us. There are probably 20 kids, a socially distanced bus worth. And in years past, we've asked for this. Add a gate to the existing fence and the kids could walk across the playground, avoiding Symphony Lane. Ask Whitpain PD for help for 20 minutes each morning and start training commuters for the change in August. Next is from Beth Danoff. I understand that the Department of Health will decide protocols should there be a COVID case or an outbreak. Will those procedures be communicated to parents ahead of time? Next is from Natasha Pakovic. I wanted to ask a follow-up question to the plan presented tonight. Assuming option 1, which is a full return to the school, why are masks only being considered as part of the plan rather than being a requirement given current scientific evidence and guidance? Especially given that masks need to be worn by majority to have an effect in preventing transmission and are required for all businesses and establishments with a much smaller number of people expected within the confined space, and even those with mainly outdoor interactions. Next one is from, and the person doesn't have their name, or I might have just missed it.
It's Beth. So I think
what was that, Wade? Beth?
I think you're going to find that it's the previous one from Beth. So I think it's Beth. Just read it as Beth.
Okay, for Beth. First, let me say that I appreciate the hard work and communication of the teachers, staff, and Dr. Crisfield to make the situation, both in the spring and fall, as manageable as possible. Given all the variables involved, I think they did and continue to do a commendable job. As I'm sure you are aware, most of the magic of school and learning comes not necessarily in lessons and projects, but in the relationships and connections developed between students and teachers, as well as their peers. With that in mind, is there any discussion about increasing the face-to-face interaction opportunities for students if we enter into a partially or fully virtual situation? In the best of all worlds, this interaction is non-virtual, but that may not be an option in certain cases, i.e. if we go back to red. In any case, I think it's essential that young people have the chance to authentically connect with their shared learning community as best and much as we can. I'm an educator myself, and I'm not advocating for an irrational and unmanageable time and technology scenario for teachers, students, and families, but face-to-face interaction in any capacity and to a reasonable degree goes a long way in motivating, supporting, and furthering all students' growth and learning, while also having immeasurable, long-lasting, and far-reaching positive effects. The next is from Bill Kasenchar. Have you considered a daily self-assessment app where each student or parent of student has to answer a series of questions regarding symptoms? The next one is from Christine De Laurentiis. Many questions in regards to our students with IEP support. 1, what differences will there be in place for IEP students in regards to options 2 and 3? 2, how will aides that typically are far closer than 6 feet away be handled? 3, oops. Sorry, I just lost my place here. Okay, question 3, how will those that have OT, speech, or other small group instruction be different? 4, for those that choose the virtual option, what does IEP support look like in the virtual space? Is the virtual academy at the high school level set up to work with students that have varied learning needs and need significant levels of support? How can the schools help prepare and plan for our students who rely on routine or are resistant to change to start school in person and then switch back and forth as the virus peaks and wanes? Okay, and then we had several other questions that came in during the reading of the other questions. Okay, so I'm going to read these last few questions that have come in since I started reading the second set of questions, and any that come in while I'm reading this set will just save for FAQs after the fact. Okay, so the last handful of questions. Let's see, this next one is from Suzanne Schaefer. Thank you for this forum tonight. It has been very informative. I did have several questions, some major, some minor. 1, to help encourage social distancing, is there a class size that you are shooting for? I understand it may vary by age, level, and by subject. 2, athletics were mentioned, but what are the plans for other extracurricular activities? 3, one of my biggest concerns for masks is making sure we get them into the hands of students in need. Each student will likely need multiple masks for hygiene. What is the district doing on this? Is this something we should have the school HSAs working on? The next one is from Brianne Rober. Starting after Labor Day, I do not support. We should start the sooner the better so we get as much face-to-face time as possible. This one is from Carrie Coleman. The CDC reported 174 pediatric influenza associated deaths for the 2019-2020 flu season. The CDC also reported that there have been 3 pediatric deaths in the US associated with COVID-19. Why are we making such draconian changes to our children's educational program when the risk is extremely low for our children? In fact, it is virtually non-existent. If you will be offering a virtual option for those who are high risk or have high risk individuals at home, why can't we just do school as normal for the children who attend school in person? If there are faculty who are high risk, can we figure out ways to protect them? Finally, what needs to happen before we can resume school as normal? 0 cases, a vaccine, this should be made clear. The next is from Eric Farno. I have 2 children currently in the district, one at Shady Grove Elementary and one going to the middle school. I work for a large multinational company, and one item we adopted early in the pandemic was the use of Microsoft Teams. This collaboration platform has helped our company continue to work together and foster creativity and collaboration even while apart. I would recommend evaluating this as an option for virtual learning. As a disclaimer, I do not work for Microsoft or have any vested interest in the company or this platform. Next is from JJ Landy. How does the school plan to help families who both parents are deemed essential and need to work in order to assist synchronous teaching if virtual school learning is necessary? Next is from Lena Booker. I am a teacher in Montgomery County. I found it most helpful in the spring to have a teaching assistant on the video call to assist in implementing breakout groups and small student work groups during synchronous learning. Please consider a co-teaching model or dual teaching model when returning in the fall, especially for K-5 grades. And the last comment is another one from Kara Finn. Fantastic plan for requiring masks on the buses. Research seems to show that if everyone wears masks, infection rate is drastically reduced. My question is whether there will be someone on each bus to assist the bus driver in ensuring everyone keeps their masks on. It seems too much to put on the bus driver. Okay, so that was the last one submitted, and I think I'm closing the the acceptance of additional questions. I don't think my voice can handle many more letters to read. So clearly a lot of questions posed. A lot of the ones that were mentioned in the second set of public comments, I think were addressed or at least partially addressed in our discussion tonight. But again, I would ask Jim and the team to kind of go through, consolidate the questions that we received and put together a list of frequently asked questions with responses that we can make publicly available on the district website. Do I have additional questions or comments from board members? I need to give my voice a break for a minute. Amy?
Yes, I wanted to ask earlier, but I forgot. Will we be offering a hot lunch option, or will we be offering just prepackaged food, or has no decision been made with regard to lunch options?
Yeah, no decision has been made.
Okay. And will we be having masks on hand at the school? If a student, for example, forgets their mask, will we be buying enough that we have some on hand?
Yes.
And as far as volunteers, will parents still be able to volunteer in the school as of now?
We believe yes. There might be some additional hurdles to jump through, as if there aren't enough hurdles now to become a volunteer. We very much appreciate our volunteers, though, and we're going to try to do everything we can to keep them. So I'd say as qualified, yes.
Okay. And when you mentioned earlier about possibly starting earlier, when and how will that be communicated to the parents that will have an earlier start date?
It will be communicated as soon as it becomes a reality, if it does become a reality, and it'll be communicated through all the normal channels as directly as we can.
Okay. And the second public comment, Joe, just to be clear, we're allowed to ask things outside of the scope of tonight's meeting as well?
Well, can ask anything, yeah.
Okay.
You can ask anything anytime.
Yeah, true.
As a board member, you're allowed to ask whatever you want.
Okay, I just want to make sure we are allowed to go outside the scope of the meeting. As far as the carnival in August, if we're going to be in green, is it look good as of now to have that carnival for the seniors?
The carnival.
Are we having a get together for the seniors, like a prom on Monday, and there was an event we talked about on Sunday?
I'm frankly, I have not paid attention to that. I gotta get some input from Dr. Blair on that.
Okay. And did you hear anything about the yearbook, whether or not we can do a supplement for the spring sports?
No.
And my last question has to do with the Hall of Fame. I just wanted to first say congratulations to those that were inducted into our Hall of Fame. But I just want to find out more about how we choose the individuals who are inducted into the Hall of Fame.
Sure. So we have a procedure that's set up where nominations are submitted. That process is advertised all over for many months. And when the nominations are received, a committee is formed, and I can't remember exactly how many people. Paul, do you remember how many people total on the committees? 7, I think, maybe?
I think you're right.
Yeah.
I don't remember exactly, but about that.
I want to say 7. And they consider the nominations and pick a certain number. There's no set number that has to be picked. But I can tell you the last, I don't know, how many years I've been here, like, let's say the last 20 people have been inducted. Incredibly impressive crew that we really need to, well, we are proud of, but we should also look to expand as much as we can. And I know we have, is the incoming class, we're just chosen 6 or 7? I don't remember, but in any case, 6 or 7 new inductees for 2020.
Thank you. That's all I had.
And also on that, you might want to point out that the Hall of Fame is not based on what the students did while they were at Wissahickon High School. This is what they've done post high school. Is that correct, Jim?
That is absolutely correct.
Right, and there's been some confusion about that. It's all post high school. If they could leap tall buildings in a single bound when they were in high school, that would not necessarily mean that they were automatically in the Hall of Fame. They have to be doing such activities after high school. Okay, thank you.
Zephy, I saw you had your hand up earlier.
I did. Thanks, Joe. I want to thank everyone for their time and their questions and their efforts for today. No doubt this is a very challenging time for everybody, families, staff, us, the board, and the school district. One thing I think that would be extraordinarily helpful in, we have put out communications, but often and continuous with updates, with any kind of information that we know, even if we don't know things, updates on things that are being worked on, things that are being dictated by, the Board of Ed versus the CDC versus us, being as transparent as possible is going to go a long way in this situation that we're in, where, we have a lot of gaps in information and we have a lot of unknowns, and we start thinking of scenarios. The more we can inform, the more we can put in front of our community what we're thinking about and what is being considered, I think the better. So I want to ask everyone to continue to do that. Dr. Crisfield, you've done a great job, but let's keep the communication going. Let everybody know exactly what we're working on and how we're approaching them, things, who's being involved. All these things matter to everybody. So I want to ask that we continue to do that.
Yeah, Tracy.
Yes. First, I wanted to say great questions by our student board reps, especially our new people. I mean, Olivia's a little used to it, but to be put on the spot like that and to, get everything out there, this was just a great job by them. And I also, I wanted to address the yearbook. So I wanted to say that I'm sorry to the students on the baseball, softball, lacrosse, tennis, and track teams for not being included in the yearbook. I realize that nowadays your sports are a year-long commitment with trainings, lessons, and practices. Gone are the days when you just show up in March for a spring sport. So to be left out of your senior yearbook, where most of you trained and played for 3.5 years, was just a terrible decision. I want to recognize your hard work, your commitment to your sport. To have your senior year stolen from you was bad enough, but to not be included in the yearbook, I think is absolutely inexcusable. I really thought that Wissahickon was better than this, and I was really, really upset to see that this was done to our spring sports. That was it. Okay.
Any other comments from Morgan? Do you have a comment?
Yes, I had two questions to ask. So I know that in the mornings, a bunch of students gather around in the natatorium and then like the square gym lobby, and we're just packed in. So have you guys thought about any ideas as if we were to go back to regular school, maybe students go directly to their classes or something like that?
Yeah, we would. We're going to have to minimize any time that resembles what you describe as packed in. Packed in is bad, and we're going to have to figure something else out.
Okay. And the other question I had was, what are we going to do about lockers? Because those are they're very small and we're all bunched in. So there's going to be certain times that people can go to their lockers, and them are evenly spaced out. Is there going to be some sort of protocol for that?
Morgan, are you suggesting the high school kids use their lockers, or are you talking about athletic lockers?
Both, to be honest, both.
Okay. Yes, we have thought about that. And all joking aside, we need to figure out something because you don't need to be standing so close to somebody else if you're both using the locker at the same time. It's a really good point.
That's all I had.
Okay, anyone else?
I have one question, Joe.
Yeah, Paul.
I know this has been a long meeting. But just a couple quick things. One, I wanted to just thank the board, the administration, all the participants of the public for tuning in and weighing in on such an important topic, important issue that are facing all of our kids. So I just wanted to thank and compliment everyone for that. Secondly, I know we've had some prior discussions, and this probably isn't the best forum to have a prolonged discussion now, but I did want to hit on the issue again of the parallel crisis that we're all facing in society today, and that is that of race relations in our country. And so I just want to know if we can provide an opportunity in the future for some discussion around that topic as well, and especially how we're going to address that going into the new school year, in addition to all else that we're facing. And so part of that is how are we going to equip our teachers and our staff to deal with questions or issues that may arise in the classroom or in school, if we are going to be proactively addressing that, and as well as how we're going to be able to prepare our students and offer counseling advice around the challenging subject that they will be facing with each other as well as in the classroom. So I just want to just kind of raise attention to that and know where we're going and where we are currently.
Okay, I can share just a quick update that we have jump-started our initiative on social emotional learning to address this specific, very important topic immediately rather than wait. And our plan is, as a matter of fact, tomorrow we're meeting with our consultant who will be helping us develop our plan. Again, this consulting company won't be providing the training, which is nice, so they can go around and find the very best pieces for us to use in a immediate start, multi-year commitment to the topic, starting with adults, actually starting with staff members, as you say, equipping them to have the conversation in a way that's safe for everybody and comfortable, but not ignore it. And it will eventually include having students have the same sort of training or just conversations about how all of this impacts them. But our thought process is adults first, so that they can help as soon as possible at the school level.
Right, and on
Can I
that,
just say one thing on that? I've noticed that some of the school districts, if you look at some of their job postings, you'll see some of them that are coming up with a district equity, diversity, and instruction officer. That's some type of position like that. Are we looking to do something like that?
The answer is quite possibly. I'm waiting to see what the plan for implementing this awareness and responsiveness training looks like, because I want to have the person, if we do either hire somebody or take somebody from within, fit into the plan. I don't want the plan to fit into that person. So it might happen. A couple of districts do have somebody at administrator level, and maybe a little bigger districts. I can envision us having somebody eventually, possibly not a permanent position, possibly a teacher on special assignment type position. But I don't want to jump the gun on that. I want to have the plan in place first.
right, and again, I'd like to also second Paul's suggestion, and but as far as getting this other source of information on training our staff, it's my understanding that we are still buying services from the NAACP for some training or as a resource. No, we're not doing that.
We're not buying anything from them at all. We have conversations with them periodically, but they're not part of the. I mean, we're not giving them any money or paying them for anything, no.
Okay. And another thing about those who are looking forward to using the auditorium and other facilities for spreading the students out. As someone who had the misfortune of actually teaching under a situation like that, it is as close to hell as an educational experience can get. If you have one class in there, that's fine. But because of the size, the administration, no offense, would have a tendency to stuff multiple classes in there, and it becomes more and more impossible to teach under that situation. So you could see maybe teaching, putting one class in an auditorium to spread it out, but you put more in, and you will not be happy with the results. Thank you.
Ron, I thought you were saying that you taught in the situation like we're in now with the pandemic, meaning you taught back in like the 1920s?
No, oh no.
Spanish flu, back when you were a teacher?
I taught a long time ago, but not quite that long. Thank you.
Okay, so just to close things out, Jim, you had mentioned that we have a special board meeting on July 20th where we as a board need to, I guess, formally adopt school reopening plan. Is that correct?
I believe the state's concept is for local districts, school board to approve it. And then and only then we can send it along to PDE. But we've been told no one at PDE is going to look at it. So it's a strange dynamic, but whatever, we'll do what they tell us to do.
Will the plan that we need to vote on and approve on July 20th contain, I assume it's going to contain more details and specifics about what fall is going to look like. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's actually a two-part plan. And the PDE has issued a template for us to use. The first part has to do with health and safety matters, many of which we discussed tonight. And the second part has to do with teaching and learning matters, also many of which we talked about tonight. So, for example, our plan to offer for sure a virtual option to anybody who wants it, and that is our current leaning, would be in the teaching and learning one, while our plan to offer or ensure as much hand washing as we can would be in the health and safety one.
Okay. And I guess what I would suggest is that since on July 20th during that special meeting, we need to vote on the plan, that if sometime prior to that meeting, we can have some kind of public presentation or discussion of what the plan actually is, similar to this setting maybe, just so the public could get a better understanding of what those details are before we have to actually vote on it. So I don't know, the week prior or
maybe July 13th is a Monday. That's a possibility.
Yeah. I mean, we can figure out the specific date, but I think it would be beneficial for, I think, us to be able to discuss it and ask questions before having to formally vote on it. And I think it'd be appreciated by the public to be able to see it as well, again, before we have to vote on it and officially approve it. Okay. Yeah, like people said, I want to thank the administration, the board, our student board reps, and folks who are watching on the Zoom or on YouTube for participating in this session. It's been a long meeting, but hopefully it was informative and beneficial for those of us involved, and more information to come. So stay tuned. All right, and with that, can I have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right, meeting adjourned. Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Hi, Joe. Good night, everyone.
Night.